This video is sponsored by Aura.
Hello, my little treasure boxes. Welcome back to my channel. Thank you for joining me. I want to talk today about the relationship between witchcraft and anger. I'm very interested in this subject, and I've had my own journey with that particular emotion over the years. And obviously, as a witchcraft practitioner, I've also had to do quite a lot of exploration in relation to how much I want my anger and my witchcraft to overlap and interplay. And I'm very interested to hear from other practitioners how that journey is gone for them as well. In this video, we're going to explore a little bit the usefulness of the emotion of anger in things like spellcraft and ritual and stuff like that. But we're also going to talk about the limits of its potential and also some of the dangers of having anger as the focal point or the fuel in magic. I want to say that I, for one, think that anger is a very sacred emotion. I do not think that there is any need to suppress it or to shame ourselves for it. I think it's really important that we see it as part of the natural emotion kit that we have available to us. And certainly I have connected my witchcraft to anger, but I also do see whereabouts I need to have some boundaries and some understandings, and I want to talk about that in this video as well. As you're watching this video, I want to gently encourage you to check in on whereabouts anger is positioned in your practice and why. This could be a very interesting one for you as you're following along to kind of like explore what is happening for you, darlings. As a witch myself, I definitely can see anger as majorly motivational in my life. When I'm angry about something and I can link that to some kind of sense of what I want to do, what I want to change, or what I don't want to put up with anymore, I'm really cooking on gas then. I know that I want to get something done. And like I said, if I can be clear about what it is that needs to happen or cease to happen, that can be a really big deal, right? A lot of the time when we're doing spellcraft, or the majority of the time really, unless you're doing fun little experiments or something like that, you are going to be motivated by a desire to see something happening differently. You want some kind of switch, some kind of change. And I think anger can be a really good signal for us that we want a change, that we are not happy with what is going on. We see something and we feel it's unjust. We experience something and we feel that we do not want to experience it any longer. So it does make sense to me that witches would feel motivated to do things like spellcraft as the result of feeling pissed off about something. Now, some witches will say to you that it is the kiss of death to do spellcraft while you are angry. Even if the motivation for doing the spell was anger, if you do spellcraft or plan spellcraft when you are angry, that can be difficult and dangerous, and we will get to that. But I do think for me personally, like, I'm angry a lot of the time, okay? I've got several emotional tabs open in my head at once. I'm not just angry, I'm a lot of things. I'm thinking about a lot of things. I'm feeling a lot of things. I journal about things daily. I go to my altar with different concerns daily. And so actually there are a lot of different emotions coming up when I do witchcraft. I think it would actually be really limiting for me to feel like I have to put anger in a box to be able to do witchcraft, when part of the reason I might be doing a spell, for example, is that I'm pissed off about something. So I don't think it's really as straightforward as like, can we be angry during spellcraft or not? Humans are more complex than that, and we're often having a range of different emotions at once, right? But yes, anger is very motivational. It can be the signal that something needs to change. It also fills your body with adrenaline, so it gives you the energy that you might need to push through some kind of block with witchcraft. Very often, you might find that if you're having a slump in witchcraft, it will be the anger that brings you back. You'll be angry about something, angry with yourself, with someone else, with the world, with systems that are going on right now, and you will just be like, I'm gonna witch about it, right? So it can be that thing that helps you to break through and come back into your practice with a great deal of intention and potency. I think it's quite good for high intensity spell workings, to be honest, and high intensity visualizations or even divination. Divination is a little bit of a sketchy one because you don't want to be too mad when you throw the cards, because you're going to be kind of like clouded by the anger. So you do have to calm yourself down, get steadied, take a few deep breaths. But I do think anger can be really good as a confidence boost, and it can be really good to kind of like help break us out of a feeling of stagnation. Anger has also made some of my ritual work much more intense, right? Like it increases the heart rate. I think it can be quite cathartic in ritual. I've done quite a bit of primal screaming. If any of you have read my books, you know I enjoy a little bit of primal screaming, okay? I really do love screaming into a pillow. I absolutely love that shit. So yeah, it can be cathartic. It can definitely heighten the intensity of ritual workings and really make me fucking feel something and lock into something that needed to come out. I often feel like any kind of sacred space, which for me is any space space where I'm doing witchcraft, I might not necessarily mark out a circle. And if you've read Rebel Witch, you know that actually, yeah, I don't necessarily think sacred space needs to be drawn out in that way. But whenever I'm in witchy space, I feel like it's a bit of a womb for me. I feel like it's a place where I can just be nurtured and be me with total authenticity without having to be performative. And so some of the feelings that come up in sacred space feel safest to be processed in sacred space. Does anybody else feel this way? I think sacred space is a little bit like a trusted therapist's office. It's the place where you can break down to break through and you can really feel your feelings. And there is something really special about knowing that you can always create a space where that is possible. Actually, if it's been a while for anyone since you really fell into some of your deep emotion and you feel like you have been suppressing it or you have been afraid of it, you know, maybe for some of you, you might feel that it is pertinent to draw out sacred space pretty soon in whatever way you make that happen, and actually let yourself be with your magic, with your power, or with your gods, with your beings, with your ancestors, however your practice is set up. Okay, we're all very different around these here parts. But essentially, it's letting sacred space be a kind of holding cell for all of this shit, right? It's really getting it out and it's going through that emotional processing. I find that so potent that I can do that anytime, any place. Everybody has to feel into their level of safety when it comes to this, and I'm definitely not telling anybody to do this. You have to figure out what is right for you. I think anger can also prompt really powerful manifestation spells, right? When you want to bring something in, you want to call something to you, you want to command something into your reality. Anger is just so powerful for that.
Darlings, this video today is sponsored by the delicious Aura. It is an incredible sleep, mindfulness and wellness app that is used by over 8 million people worldwide. It's full of hypnosis and CBT. It's got incredible meditations. It's got sleep stories, ASMR, breath work, and so much more, even live coaching, my darlings. I'm the kind of person that likes to have a wealth of mental well-being tools in my pocket or in my bag at all times. And Aura is an incredible option to make sure that I don't just have multiple apps of that description, but I can find it all together in one. Setting up an account with Aura is super easy. You can customize your preferences. You can even make playlists now, my darling. So if you find things that you like, you can put them together so they make sense and you can always return back to them. You can get started with Aura completely free by clicking the link in my description, and you will also get 25% off if you want to go on and go ahead with Aura from there. You can also join me for the 30-day meditation challenge, and you can check out my playlist that I put together, which is full of amazing shadow work tools. Thank you so much, Aura, for sponsoring the video. Let's get back to it.
On the more negative side of things with anger, my darlings, obviously it is an emotion that can often encourage extremity. It feels extreme in the body, and it might lead us to feel like extreme actions are necessary magically. And actually, it's quite hard sometimes to get even a thin piece of paper between your anger response and your sense of what needs to happen. And actually, we need just a little bit more space sometimes between those two things. I definitely know from bitter experience, as someone who used to be addicted to rage, that it can lead to things happening that you later regret. You can take actions or say things or whatever that you later regret. And I will leave a video down below that I made some time ago about my former relationship with anger and the addictive component that it had for me. So please don't think that I'm sitting here like, oh, anger's so positive and, you know, we should be able to use it in witchcraft, and thinking that I'm naive to some of the damaging effects of having a toxic connection to that emotion, because believe me, I've had that toxic connection. Yeah, I lived with it and so did everybody around me. Okay, I've had to do a lot of work to get to where I am now. Anger can become chronic. Like I said, it can become addictive. It definitely has a very difficult effect on the nervous system. It can cause exhaustion. It can lead to stress responses in the body, physiological stress responses like hair loss and fatigue and twitching and all kinds of things. I've had a twitchy eye from being consistently angry before. I've definitely had hair loss from stress that had a lot to do with anger. I have alopecia areata, and it's come up twice in my life now. And both times is when I've been dealing with a lot of anger. So it dumps itself into the body, you know, in a very extreme way. So if we as witches rely on it too much as the fuel and the potency for our witchcraft, we're going to be bang in trouble. We're going against the body there. We do need to have a balanced relationship, of course, with anger. We can't rely on it all the time. It can definitely cloud intuition. I've heard many witches say that they do not pull cards when they're feeling super pissed off. They try to calm the fuck down first of all. And you know what? I get that. I understand that. And I definitely am the same. When it comes to divination, if I I am so angry about something, I try to give it a little bit of time before I do the necessary. I want to work with the cards, but I might wait. Oh, 7 of Cups. You have the choice. It's just randomly come up there. Oh, and the Magician on the other side. You have the choice what to do when you're angry, okay? Don't get in there too quickly. You are the witch and, you decide what happens next. There we go, a little 2-card reading for anybody there who fancied one from me. So yeah, definitely I think sometimes we are seeing something very limited in the cards when we're using them when we're super angry. And I also think because of the tension that can be held in the body and the cyclical thoughts that can sometimes happen mentally when you're very angry, it can reduce your sense of presence in ritual. So it's definitely a double-edged sword ritually. Like I said, it can make things feel more intense and cathartic in a really positive way, but I do have to check in. And I don't know if anybody else feels this way, but I have to check in because anger can lead me to feeling that I'm not truly present with what I'm doing and I'm therefore not getting the maximum amount of benefit out of what I'm doing in that moment. I have to feel that I'm in ritual mindset. And if something is hijacking me, like something that I'm really viscerally, hotly angry about, then it might not be the right time to do ritual. And I always say to witches, right, when I'm working with them, when I'm talking to them, I always say, you can pull the emergency stop cord at any time during ritual or magic. Do not think that you can't. If you get a sense that, you know what, I'm too angry right now, then you can always stop. Don't forget that. Anger can feel like a very powerful barometer for what is true. It can feel like a way that you really know that something is factual, right, in that moment. And then later on, with the benefit of hindsight and the benefit of a calmer nervous system and perhaps a little bit of sleep or whatever, you realize like, oh, you know what? It was way more nuanced than that. I went a little bit OTT there, okay? So that can be another reason why some witches feel like, you know what, I need to sort of leave off of the anger response before I do anything magically. And of course, we don't have to do spellcraft when we're angry. We can have a rule with ourselves, in fact, that we don't do spells when we're angry. We don't shoot for change when we are very, very like adamant and angry about what should change. We don't do that in every situation because sometimes we might need a little bit of time. But we can do other things like visualization, right? Like the breathing exercises, like meditation. We can do chanting, we can do drumming, we can speak to our gods and our guides, we can ask them to hold counsel for us. So there's so many other things we can do. We don't have to go to spellcraft, but has anybody else, aside from moi, has anybody else really just been like, I'm doing a fucking spell about this right the fuck now. Nobody messes with me on this. I've been there. Okay, I've been there. We go there from time to time. But I think as you sort of like mature in your attitudes and your abilities as a witch, you can know when anger is a benefit and when it is definitely more of a, more of a disadvantage. I want to talk a little bit about anger as a spiritual energy and how I position that in my understanding as a witchcraft practitioner. I think anger can sometimes be a very sacred signal for me that a boundary has been crossed and that I really need to correct something either in my own behavior or I need to communicate something to somebody relating to their behavior. I also think that anger can just be a sign that I need to check my vitals, right? How much sleep have I been having? What was the last thing I ate? When was the last time I worked out? These are really important questions for me personally as someone who deals with depression. And I will leave down below a couple of videos that I've made in the past about my own journey with being diagnosed with depression and going through that sort of whole experience of living in that way. Those are really important things. So yes, it can be a very sacred sign, but it can also just be a bodily sign that I'm having some kind of an emotional response to not being my own best friend in terms of getting my physiology where it needs to be to deal with my diagnosis. And so over time, I've become very, very good about getting angry and then being like, why are you angry? And the way that I do this, guys, is I figure out that my anger is out of proportion to what is going on. So for example, a really big example for me that anger is not a sign that a boundary has been crossed, but in fact a sign that I need self-care is when I get very, very angry with inanimate objects. Does anybody else?
It's an inanimate fucking object.
You're an inanimate fucking object!
Does anybody else start to get really fucking personal with inanimate objects? Like, how could you do this to me? Why were you in the way? I don't say it exactly like that, but I will kick something and be like, fuck you. And then I'll be like, okay, whoa. Hey, what's going on? Let's check the vitals. Let's go through and have a little look. Because the way that my diagnosis works, I have multiple diagnoses really that I've been dealing with over the years. And the way that it works is that I have ups and downs, right? So I have ups where I'm extremely high. I mean, I'm always extremely high energy, bitches, okay? That's just how I was born, all right? I'm zesty as a rule. But the way that it works is I do have ups and downs energetically. And when I have ups, I do not get as much sleep. And I am very, very, very active. And so when I have the ability to sleep more and relax more, I need to be doing that. If I've not been doing that, it will lead to anger. If there are things that I have not been doing for my self-care, that I've just been ignoring, I've been overlooking, I will get an anger response. So part of my spiritual relationship to anger is to try to understand what it could be saying to me. What is it communicating to me? It could be just communicating that I feel very angry about injustice and I'm absolutely righteous in that anger, and what am I going to do about it? Or it could be that I'm angry about a crossed boundary. I'm angry about being misunderstood in some way by someone in my life. I'm angry about something I've not been doing that I needed to be doing or saying. But it can also just be a sign that, like, my body is under stress. I need to look at what is going on with my bodily processes. I'm very neck up and I'm very untethered. I think a lot of people that watch my content are the same way. Because you're spiritual, you're seekers, you're mystics, you're witches, you're probably working from head up, from the neck up quite a bit, right? You're researching and learning and studying and thinking and overthinking and thinking again and rehashing and imagining, and you're probably really into astral stuff, and like obviously you do a lot of magic, you do a lot of ritual, so you're in that ritual headspace, magical headspace, right? Transpersonal experiences. A lot of you are psychonauts, I know, my psychedelic crew. You know, it's easy to forget that you live in a meat suit. That's what I'm trying to say. It's easy to fucking forget that you have a physical vessel. Sometimes my anger is just trying to say that to me, no more, no less. It's my body saying, I can't do all this shit you want me to do unless you sit down and eat some goddamn broccoli. I think anger can be raw, it can be purifying, it can be the moment of a portal that I'm walking through between one way of being and the next way of being. I think anger can demonstrate to me my ethical code. When I get angry about things that are going on in this reality, it reminds me of who I am, what I stand for, and that I still have a heart, you know? So I'm not into demonizing anger. I think anger can have a lot of extremely important functions. And for a lot of people as well, it is really transformative because so many people have felt that their anger has been suppressed, right, by the upbringing that they had, by the family that they were raised into, even sometimes just by their own personality. Like they might be nervous of their own anger, they might not enjoy confrontation with self or others, and maybe they feel anger will lead to that. So at the point where you really allow yourself to feel your deep down anger, it can feel like you're coming home to yourself. And that is a really intense thing about the spiritual quality of anger that I think is so important. Of course, let's not forget, anger has been the starting flame, the beginning of so many important movements for social change and political justice, and so many important cycle breaking events that have happened inside a person have happened because of anger. Anger has been a part of the process that has helped them to understand that they don't want to live like this anymore. They don't want to operate like this anymore. They want to say something. They want to change. They want to be able to be who the fuck they are. I think that it's the pathway towards a lot of honesty. I think a lot of people that are hiding, for example, their queerness inside, their transness inside, part of what might lead them to reach the conclusion that they have to be themselves is anger. That's part of it, right? Looking around and seeing how some people are treated differently to other people and feeling pissed off about that is the beginning of every single good deed and good thing and policy change that may come after. So I never ever denigrate anger. I respect anger and I give it its place. But just like every emotion, I think it's like an incredible spectrum. It's a spectrum of light and shadow, darlings. Anger can sometimes be very chaotic. It can be unsettling. It can be disorienting, but it can also be a gift. It can also be the moment you get honest with yourself, get real with yourself, and make a decision about what the fuck is going to happen next. So it really is an incredibly complex mixed bag. I'd be really interested to know how you guys feel about anger as a spiritual energy, or what the spiritual quality of anger is. In other words, how does it interplay with your practice and your sense of what it is to be on a spiritual journey? How is it a teacher, and how is it a confuser? How is it a poison and how is it a medicine? Spirituality, I think, gives me an opportunity to have healthy outlets for my anger. And not only that, but I think what's more important is it gives me the opportunity to strengthen myself for the material outlets that I need for my anger. In other words, what changes am I going to make? If I'm angry about something going on, what am I going to do about it, right? Where's the nearest protest? Who do I need to call? What do I need to decide right now that I'm going to get up and do? So it's that part that is kind of like, I'm going to see the material effects of it in my life. But in order to be able to have gotten to that, I've had to go through a huge process of spiritual outlets for anger. I had to realize that I was addicted to anger. In my case, that was my story. And for other people, they have to realize that they're afraid of anger and they've pushed it out for too long and they've never ever curled up with it. I was curled up with it for too long. All right, that was my situation. But for a lot of other people, spirituality is the vessel into which they can experience anger safely. And that's so powerful for so many people. I'm not here to tell you whether or not to specifically do spellcraft or ritual when you're in a state of anger. I think that is so personal and it's such a complex question, and I'm not the person to answer it for every single practitioner. What I will do though is I will read to you from my notes, okay? I made some notes about the benefits of using anger in spellcraft and in ritual and the negatives of using it as well, okay? And actually it came out about equal as I was doing my little brainstorm this morning. I've been journaling about this recently, but I did a little brainstorm about pros and cons, all right? So on the benefit side, anger can fuel potent protection spells and warding spells and banishing spells and cord cutting spells, right? I mean, let's face it, a lot of witches who are doing things like banishing or cord cutting, they're going to have anger in there as part of the kick in the tits, right, that the working kind of needs. I think especially when you're asserting your right to peace or your right to be authentic in the world, anger might come into it at times because of what has led you to have to do the spell working in the first place. You know, your right to be left alone, your right to be treated fairly. I've also put here, it adds a lot of raw energy to things like cord cuttings and things of that nature, especially when you're breaking a really toxic tie or you're breaking a really toxic habit that you've been coming back to. It can sharpen focus and intention in spells that demand justice or retribution. It can empower shadow workings. So if you're doing spellcraft around working with a piece of your shadow content, I think it can really help you to bring the repressed pain to the surface for transformation. Again, full disclaimer, you decide what is safe for you. That is very important. But let's not pretend that witches don't work with their own shadow content in spellcraft. Let's not pretend that the only safe and responsible place to do that is in a therapist's office. I really don't like that point of view. I will fight you in the comments.
At my signal, unleash hell.
So I've put here that righteous anger is something that is shared with a lot of other witches. And so when we're tapping into that anger that we share around like world issues, things that are going on in the world, as opposed to things that are going on just in our personal story, it's like we're linking up with those strong energetic bonds and creating that momentum for social change. I feel supported by other witches who are angry about the same things I'm angry about. I genuinely feel that. And that's something that's been really important for me, especially with my Palestine activism. It can amplify the energy of manifestation when it's paired with a refusal to tolerate the current conditions any longer. It is that adamant sense of refusal that can be so positive, and it is the call to action. So it's really good for activating sigils, doing like energizing emergency work. Like there's so many different ways in which it could come into the fold and be a force for good. On the negative side, okay, anger can turn into uncontrolled rage, and that can backfire when we're doing spell workings. It can attract maybe chaotic results. It can lead to certain outcomes that we did not want and that basically with the benefit of hindsight, we realize we never wanted, as I said earlier. It can be directed at the wrong target sometimes. It can also get mixed up with our projection. If we're really deep in an anger response, like I said earlier, it's not always a good barometer for the truth, but it can feel at the time like it's absolutely righteously, absolutely true, right? In other words, it can stop us from questioning where the emotion is coming from and what is going on before we do something. So it can be very impulsive. It can lead to impulsivity. It may lead to revenge-based spell workings that perpetuate cycles of harm and pain. And by the way, I'm not sitting here saying that I'm like against hexings and stuff like that. I made a whole video on that a while ago. I'll leave it down below. Over-reliance on anger for power in spellcraft can create emotional dependency and spiritual imbalance. I wrote here that anger-fueled magic can leave a kind of like energetic residue at times. I really think that's important to know. I think that for me, whenever I'm doing a working that has a lot of anger involved in it, I also balance it out with my energy management, right? So my cleansing, my grounding, centering. I made a video recently about energy management, guys. I will leave that down below if you have not seen it. I've put here that some witches struggle with issues that would mean that channeling anger as an energy in magic might hurt them. It might cause them to, affect or endanger their sense of mental wellness. I think it's just so important to put that into the mix. It's not one size fits all, and it's not the right thing for everybody at every point. And I think that also anger can cause breaks in clarity, and as I said earlier, breaks in presence, okay? So if we want to be present with what we're doing, and we want to make sure that we're not distracted and we're not going into cyclical thoughts and obsessive thoughts, etc., we might want to calm anger down or not use it as the primary fuel. I want to ask you to consider a few things about your relationship with anger as a practitioner, okay? So when you're experiencing an anger response to something, or you're addressing why you're angry about something, and you think about going to witchcraft, ask yourself, is your anger in a place whereby you feel safe to be able to explore it in witchcraft, and witchcraft feels like the natural next right action? If you feel a great deal of fear or you're uncertain about it, you can always wait. And don't forget, like I said earlier in this video, there are so many other things you can do aside from spellcraft that you might worry is reactionary or might miss the target. It might actually be worthwhile for you to write a list of the different things that you would consider doing in your witchcraft whilst angry, and then the things that you would not consider doing. For example, like I said, I would not do tarot while I'm incredibly angry. That is one thing that I know I would not do. I do like to go to the astral level and explore my anger on the astral level. I have fought my dad on the astral level. Who's with me? Who's done a fight club? Who's fought their dad on the astral level? Get at me in the comments. I'm sure I'm not alone.
Who'd you fight? Fight my dad.
If you work with any energies, beings, entities whatsoever that give you guidance and kind of help you understand what to do in your witchcraft moving forward, you can go to them in the fullness of your anger and ask them, what do you think? You know, I have several times gone to hell to ask her about doing a specific spell working that I felt very energized about. And actually the majority of the time she tells me to fucking take a seat, calm down, have a Ribena and relax and not do anything until I feel a little bit more with it. So sometimes it is the goddess work that gets me out of doing something that I may later wish I hadn't done. A couple of other things I want to suggest. Feel where the anger is in your body. That can be so useful, and it can also help you to take a breather while you figure out what to do next. Is just to go into where the anger is placed in your physicality and really feel what you can learn from that. What can you glean from that? What can you understand from it? For me, that's an opportunity to figure out whether or not it's like a stress response or sort of like hidden tension somewhere, whether or not it's a need for self-care and soothing and gentleness with myself, whether or not it's coming from a place of righteous injustice and an indignation about inequality. I feel that kind of anger differently in my body to the way that I feel the stress related anger is in my body. So when you start to be able to build a map of what happens in your body when you're angry, you can understand the type of anger it is, and that gives you more information about what you could do with it magically. Whatever you decide to do about your anger, I would recommend try not to shame yourself for it and try to meet it with compassion. You know, try to meet it with compassion. Some of the anger that I experience is anger that comes from a past version of myself, the teenage version of myself. And she was angry a great deal of the time, and she had very understandable reasons to be. But because of that, sometimes when she comes out of the woodwork, I have to kind of work with her and get her where she needs to be and nurture her and listen to her much more than I need to do any kind of spell. The spell work can wait because actually a younger part of me, a wounded part of me is activated. And so I need to go and speak to that part of me and sit with that part of me and go into reparenting mode. If you want to understand a little bit more about how I do parts work and my beliefs about it, I'll leave a couple of videos down below relating to that so you can like dig into that a little bit deeper. But yeah, if the younger version of me is activated, I try to give her compassion and sit with her needs first of all before I do anything witchy. When I feel really angry, I try to think about what I want the result of that anger to be. Where do I want the anger to go? What needs to happen, or what would I like to have happen as a result of feeling so pissed off? off. And I try not to rush myself into this thinking process, because I know that anger itself has to have a process and it has to be sat with. And if I try to railroad it too quickly into like, well, what am I going to do about it then I'm not really respecting the fact that sometimes I just need to feel my anger without thinking about strategizing for change. I just need to feel my anger. And one of the best ways actually for me to do that as a witch is just to like sit in sacred space, with my beings, and just like rile at them, not at them. I'm not angry with them, but I just need to break it down. You've no idea the amount of times I've gone and lit Hell's working candle, looked at the images of her, closed my eyes and gone to meet her and been like, I'm fucking pissed off, I'm angry, and I'll be pacing around in her apple orchards, like, and another thing and another fucking thing and this and that and this, right? I just need to do that. That's what I need to do. And then I can start to think, okay, what needs to happen now? Sometimes I can get there really, really quickly. Sometimes I'm like, I get angry and I know immediately what I want to have happen and what my next right action needs to be. But it's not always that clear cut. But as soon as you can get to it, I would recommend getting to it. If you know that you regularly get angry without at any point thinking about what you want to have happen, what the result of your anger would be in your desired, idealized life, then I would really recommend start thinking about that. Don't just get angry and then let the anger subside and then drop it and move on, especially if you're getting angry consistently about the same thing. Try to sit with your journal at some point soon and decide, okay, what do I want to have happen with this? I'm getting angry about it and I keep getting angry about it. What would I like to be the result of this anger? What would I like to be able to point at and say, I changed that, I did that, I said that, whatever, because of the fact that I was feeling angry and I knew that there needed to be some change. Before I go today, darlings, I know that we are all very, very different in our practices. We are very different. And so you're going to have a different idea of what constitutes a really good working that could incorporate your anger. But I just want to give you a few ideas that I wrote down, okay? Just like a few ideas. First of all, anything to do with fire is righteous when you're angry. Who else breaks out the cauldron hardcore when they're angry? Is it just me? It's not just me. Get at me down below if you're in the cauldron crew. Put the fire emojis on that shit. Because for me, doing burning rituals, burning release, like writing my angry shit on a piece of paper and burning it as if to say like, I claim this, or I release this, or I vow to do something about this, whatever it is, I want it out of my body. And so I'm going to burn it. Whatever it is I'm doing with the fire, combining fire with my anger. Oh yeah, that is always good. Get yourself some kind of fireproof receptacle and try this out, okay? Also, justice stuff. You can reroute your anger about something personal into something collective. Or if you've just got anger about something collective, do spellcraft on that, do ritual on that. That's a really powerful thing. I think justice is something that is such a beautiful thing to crusade for. And if we can connect our witchcraft to that kind of stuff, justice spells, incredible. Another good thing that is really nicely fueled, I think, by a little bit of anger is cleansing, spiritual cleansing, and also physical cleaning. And also physical cleaning as a form of spiritual cleansing. This is something that took me ages to get to grips with, guys, in my practice, but I'm finally there in the last few years. And it's really just realizing that like cleaning is spiritual, cleaning is cleansing. And I don't think that our place has to be clean and tidy and everything in order before we do spellcraft. I believe in witching in chaos. I believe in literally physical chaos, okay? I've witched with a pile of laundry on this side and a pile of paperwork on that side. But I'm saying whenever I feel like I need a spiritual cleanse, a ritual cleanse, I need to get rid of old energy or get rid of energy that is harmful to me. I am just as likely to do that by cleaning and organizing and sorting things out, going through something that I know needs to sort, cleaning behind something that I know is dusty. I'm just as likely to do that as I am to do spiritual cleansing, like using sound or using smoke or whatever. So I really would recommend that. If you are angry and you want to know what could I do that is safe and productive cleansing, Cleansing, and especially if you can connect it to cleaning, the cleaning can become the spiritual cleansing. You could channel your anger and write out what your anger is saying. You can visualize your anger as a personified being and have a conversation with it. You know, really just think, what does my anger look like? Who is it? What is its problem? How does it express itself? Where does it live? You can do drawings around that. You can do journaling or write stories around that. You can get very creative with interfacing with your anger in witchcraft. Obviously cord cutting, you know, all of that stuff, cord cutting, release work, any of that stuff can be fueled by anger as well as other things, I think. But I think anger can be part of it sometimes. Break something. Breaking something is actually a really spiritual thing to do when the situation calls for it, okay? Not in like a fit of mad rage where you throw something and then you're like, why did I just throw that cup against the wall? Damn, you know, I'm emotionally dysregulated as fuck. But instead to do it in a spiritual context, to say, okay, I am very, very angry about this. I keep getting angry about it. I'm going to process it in various ways. But one of the ways I'm going to do it is by smashing this glass that was there at the time, or like, you know, I'm going to break this necklace that, you know, has something to do with it, or whatever it is, right? And you can also just write it down and then rip it the fuck up. Just write down what it is you're angry about and rip it up. You can create something, something of natural materials, right, that represents the thing that you're angry about, and then destroy it. I've done this with bread a few times, which is really powerful to do. And once the bread is sort of allowed me to be able to rip it and see that I'm ripping the body of the thing that I'm angry about, then I can consume it. I consume it as if to say, now I decide what happens next. I have made this into another form. Bread is something that I have used quite often on and off in my magic, actually. It's really, really useful. You can use angry movement in your witchcraft. You can do angry drumming. You can do angry dancing, okay? You can do angry singing. You can do all of those things. Get into your body. Get a little bit somatic about what is going on with your anger. Express your anger outwardly. I have done a few rage dances in my time and I really, really love them. They let me go into my animal nature. They let me go into my God nature. They help me to understand what is going on. When I dance out any emotion, I don't want to get emotional, but for me, this is a really big thing. I love dancing. I love dancing. It's reminding me of that Martha Graham quote, every dancer dies twice. The first is when they stop dancing, and that's always the more painful. Oh, so true. Dancing to me is like just this really strong sense of being able to understand something about what I'm going through that I didn't understand before I started dancing. You can dance on the astral level. You don't have to dance physically. You can dance in the astral. And so that's really important to note too. Even when I couldn't dance for many years, I danced on the astral level. And I used to do that as a child. As a child, I would go to the astral and I would dance. I would dance through great hall rooms full of books and beings and things going on, and I would go outside and there would be a big bonfire and I would dance around the bonfire. I understood things about myself and what I wanted for my future by doing that. You know, so it's really getting into the body, physical or astral or both, and really thinking like, okay, what is this telling me about what the next right action needs to be? What is this telling me about what my anger is for? Darlings, thank you so much for watching this incredibly passionate video about anger as it relates to witchcraft and magic. Let me know down below all of the comments that you have, the thoughts and feelings you have about your journey with anger as a spiritual practitioner. If you would like to have some spiritual counselling with me, I do offer spiritual counselling sessions and packages over at my online store. They are intuitive, they are tailored to your individual needs, they take the spirit and the soul as the starting point, and we will go into what is going on for you and how you can shape your life according to your needs and desires. And I also have a bunch of other readings and mentoring options, so go over there and have a look at what is available, and we will do some work together live one-on-one, and you can even record it so you can watch it back. Thank you so much to Aura for sponsoring this video. I hugely appreciate you, Aura. You are an excellent, excellent app. And until next time, my darlings, blessed be and take care. Much love. Mwah.